is the May 15th, 2023 meeting of the Acushnet Public Library Board of Trustees. We are being audio taped and videotaped, and we do have a quorum. We have one item on the agenda before our main agenda today, and that has to do with the pest control. Dina had spoke about it at our last meeting, and she signed the contract with Proficient Pest Services to have them come in and treat the building, as they had found that some of the droppings were for
larger than life
animals. Yes, animals. Didn't say what kind of animals, but animals. She did have some follow-up questions about fixing the entry points, which they should be able to do, but if not, they will, if it's beyond their scope, they're going to recommend someone who, oh my goodness.
You can see how this is gonna go.
Recommend someone who can do that. The only other thing is, in order for them to clean up the droppings, it's going to cost above the contract price, so it's going to be $150 per hour. Sandra is going to ask how many hours it would take, although I don't think there's that much down there. So, but the only other alternative is to ask Rick to do it. But the pest control people use a special HEPA filter to do that, so I don't necessarily know that we want to ask Rick to. I don't know about breathing in that stuff or what. So if we would just need a motion to add that, right, to have them clean up, and then maybe up to a certain point. I mean, I can't see that it's going to take. I don't want to say that it's going to take 1 hour and then we approve 1 hour and it takes 2 hours, or so maybe up to 3 hours, or whatever anyone thinks.
Just do whatever.
Okay.
So we have to do it.
Sounds good.
Yep.
All right, so we need a motion then.
Make a motion to add that to the contract that's proposed for Proficient.
Okay.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I'll let Sandra know. The main item on our agenda today is the search committee has gone through all the resumes and performed the preliminary interviews for the candidates for the new library director. This meeting will have the 2 final candidates interviewed at separate times today, asking the same questions, and they will be done on camera, and then we will have a discussion and hopefully vote for our new library director. Our first candidate's here.
Hello. Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
I feel like the Shark Tank's in here.
Likewise.
Is there a way to shut the air off? Yes, I can feel it. It's a terrible breeze
Sandra.
that's blowing in this direction.
No, I need a stick.
Oh.
It's usually right here. I'll get some.
Good to see you again.
Likewise.
If you remember, this is Nancy,
Yes.
Steve, and myself. We were on
Yes.
the first interview panel, and these are the other 2 members
Hello.
of our board,
Hi.
Jerry and Diane. We're here for your final interview for the library director's position. As we mentioned before, we're being audio taped and videotaped, but you don't have to pay too much attention to the camera. That's okay.
We'll distract you.
Yeah, you can just talk to us, and
Sure.
that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
So that's good.
All right.
If you're ready, we can just
Sure.
start right in.
All right.
All right. Describe your present and previous work experience and how it has prepared you for this job.
So I have an extensive work experience within libraries. So I started off, 22 years ago, I started off as a work-study student at the circulation desk at a university. And I built my way up throughout my career at the university. At one point, I was interim daytime and nighttime circulation manager. And I also worked at the reference serials and interloan departments at Suffolk University. And then following that, I started working at Acushnet. It was my first public library experience. So I was at Suffolk for about 15 years. Then I came to Acushnet while I was going to library school. And I was at Acushnet for about 3.5 years. And I graduated right at the start of the pandemic. But I luckily, I got a full-time job. And I've been working at Millicent here in Fairhaven as the head of circulation. So throughout my career, I've held a ton of positions and I've gathered all this experience from all these different departments. So I understand what keeps the library going because I've been in almost every position that's available at a library. And I've had I had public experience and I had academic experience. I know we don't really deal with academic here, but it's always good to have knowledge in something that is related to where you're working in.
Absolutely. Can you cite some examples of your leadership ability, and what do you see as the most difficult task in being a manager?
So some examples would be, at Suffolk, I was appointed interim manager twice. That means I was leading a staff of roughly, depending on the semester, roughly between 25 to 30 work-study students. That meant maintaining schedules, that meant scheduling, and then also for the full-time staff there, I was managing their payrolls, and scheduling was kind of set in stone, but if there was absences, you would have to fill the slot and stuff. And then currently as the head of circulation at Fairhaven, I'm in charge of all things CIRC there. So if there's an issue with anything regarding CIRC, people will come to me to resolve, what the situation is.
Sounds like a lot.
It is.
Describe a particularly difficult situation with either patrons or staff you experienced. How did you handle it?
We could be here all day with that. We can go as simple as a situation where this happens. It happens a lot where you work at a library, you have staff. A patron will come to the desk and they're like, "I have returned this item. I've sworn I returned this item," and they're already angry as soon as they walked in the door. And the steps to following that problem, and the first step is always check the shelves. Sometimes it happens to be on the shelf, so you pull the item, check it in, and then you apologize to the patron. And 9 out of 10 times, they're like, okay, they're turned back. They're less angry, and accidents happen. So that's just one simple issue that happens quite frequently in libraries. And something more recent, a little bit more intense, was we had a difficult patron who came in, asking questions. It went really smoothly, and then suddenly became really aggressive. So there was something off, and no matter what solution or we came to discuss with her, they weren't having it. So the bottom line was to try to get this patron to leave on her own accord, which she did, because there was just no engaging here. That happens less frequent than, it is an angry patron because of an item that might be on the shelf, but not to get too specific, but that's how we dealt with those two situations.
I'm sure those are just a few of many. As you said, we could be here for a while.
We could. Oh, yes.
How do you anticipate the requirements of this position differing from the position you currently hold?
There would be two things. One would be, I know I have a staff of 3 circulation assistants. As a director, you're the head of everyone. So that would be different. And then the budgeting would be a little bit different. The budgeting I do right now is mostly book budgeting, but in the past I had done payroll, and there was different budget lines within the payroll. But I'm also, I'm willing to learn and train in it, and my weakest points would be something that I would want to bring up if I was hired, and definitely offer the training that the MBLC has, maybe the town, anywhere that I can find it.
What is the biggest challenge you faced, and how did you handle it?
Oh boy, I want to get personal, but I'm trying to, I don't want to be personal about it. I would say there was always a struggle in my career of I was never good enough for the next position because I didn't have my master's in library science. And, it took me roughly 17 years to decide I need to invest in myself. And I finally accomplished it. I went to Simmons, graduated, and then I was always told, oh, you can't apply for the position, the intern position I was doing, because I didn't have my master's. And that was a big upset to me. And, it's not cheap to go to graduate school, and, the only way to move up was to, bite the bullet, so to say, and, invest in yourself. And that's, I would say, that the biggest challenge that I faced in my career-wise.
That's not easy to do.
It's not. It's not.
Congratulations on overcoming it, for sure.
Thank you. Should have done it sooner, but,
Well,
you know
what they say, if you knew then what you know
yes.
now, right?
Oh, yes.
And what do you anticipate as your biggest challenge if you are hired?
I think it's going to be, because I worked here for 3.5 years, it might be I've been in the tech seats, it might be that barrier of I have to let someone else do it because I know I'm capable of doing it. Not that it's a bad thing, but it's just in my brain I would have to set boundaries for personally as you tell someone to do it because I'm oh, I can go do it because I've done it in the past. I think that would be the biggest challenge that I would face.
This job requires a lot of flexibility to attend Board of Trustee, budget, Friends of the Library meetings, etc., and to interact with multiple different community groups during and after library hours. Do you foresee any problems with the flexibility of your schedule?
Absolutely not.
That was easy. Okay, now, always the question, right?
Yes.
Tell us why you feel you're the best candidate for the job and why we should hire you.
All right, let's see. So, if you want someone who loves this place, someone who would require minimal training, somebody who has the experience working with the public, working in Acushnet, working in the network, the sales network, that would be me. So to say, my blood, sweat, and tears have been in this building. For that short period that I was here, I went through a lot personally, and I was in school also for the master's, and I developed the love for the public library in here. And I think the staff that were here, and I have they were such wonderful co-workers here. And, the other day I had a memory of I was posed in a T-Rex costume in front of the Acushnet sign during COVID. We had a drive-by ice cream, so we were handing out ice creams, and I adorned my T-Rex costume. So, like, if that's not love for this place.
You might be able to pull that up.
Yeah, I know. I have it on my phone if you want proof. But that was just, it was one of the best days here. And, I would love to have that happen again. And that's why I think you should pick me.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
Does she?
Well, that was my next one. I was asking anyone else first.
Well, I don't think you should apologize for 17 years. If you didn't know that was the job you wanted.
Well, it
Crazy
was.
to spend time and money on it
yes.
until you knew.
I know. It just took me different departments, and I was like, okay, I really need this. And
Right.
as I was old enough to say, okay, let's do this.
Old enough and paying for it yourself.
Yes. Oh yes. That would be for a very long time.
Yeah.
And if no one else has any questions, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, and for those of you on camera, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but this is Elizabeth Vitello, our first candidate for the position of library director. Thank you very much
You're
for coming
welcome.
in.
You're
We
welcome.
appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We have one more interview today,
Okay.
and then we will be discussing and then voting. And
Okay.
you will hear
Okay.
very soon.
All right.
Either way.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
We're going to take a short recess. Give me a motion.
I'll make a motion to recess until
Second.
our next person comes in.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And to reopen the meeting.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's stop sitting this long.
Hi, Nan.
Hi.
Welcome back. How are you today?
How you doing?
Good. Have a seat.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. If you recall, we have Nancy, Steve, and myself. We met you the first time. These are our other two members of the board. We have Diane and Jerry.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
And we, as you know, we had conducted the first interviews, and you are one of the two final candidates.
Thank you.
We're being audio taped and videotaped, but you don't have to pay any attention to the camera.
Thank you.
We're just going to ask you the exact same questions that we asked the other candidate, and we'll go from there.
All right.
You're all set?
All right. Thank you.
All right, and for those of you that are watching, this is Ann Richard, our other candidate, who is one of the two final candidates for the library director position. Describe your present and previous work experience and how it has prepared you for this job.
I'm currently the Director of Library Services at Tabor Academy, which even though it's a boarding school and a high school, it's also a community there. There's families who live there, so there's young children, there's adults, there's staff members, so we are not just a typical school library. Previous to that, I was in public school libraries. Unfortunately, just like my current job, there's always layoffs in those jobs. Unfortunately, it's one of the things that sometimes gets cut first, besides art and music, is libraries, which I don't agree with, but that's another story. Previous to that, I was a library director in Tiverton, Rhode Island, where I worked, and I did the budget there. I also have to work my budget this year, or in every year that I'm there, and I have staff members. I have to use the payroll system to pay them, so all of these things I think definitely will help in this position. Tiverton is a small town library, just like Acushnet is, and I had to go before the finance committee, go to town meeting, and vote, kind of fight for every single penny of my budget, which sometimes happens in towns. So that is something I'm willing to do. And in my personal life, I'm also a member of my town meeting. We just had our town meeting last week, and I know you have had that recently as well. So it's always something that comes up every year. So getting up in front of town meeting as I did a couple weeks ago, is not a problem for me. I don't mind at all fighting for books and literacy. I think it's really important. I think that every town needs to have a really, really vibrant community library.
Excellent. Can you cite some examples of your leadership ability, and what do you see as the most difficult task in being a manager?
I think it's important that you know your staff and you listen to them. I think that it's sometimes difficult to come into a position that you're the new person and they might have been here for 20 years working at the library, or even not necessarily in this building, but for the system. So listening to what they have to say and not trying to come in and make all these crazy changes the first day you're there, to actually like kind of taking a look at it and see what's there and see what works and doesn't work. As I said the last time we met, I think one of the most difficult things is dealing with people's schedules and finding the time to fill the hours. I believe there's part-timers who work here, and sometimes it's hard to find people to work, and it's hard to fill those hours, and it's hard to give the community the resources and the services they need, but also realizing that people have lives and people have families and they're busy and they want to go on vacation and they're sick, especially in the last 2 or 3 years. Obviously there's been a lot of that downtime that it's hard to fill positions, and it's hard to get people that are willing to work with the public and also good people that will stay. So that's a really challenge as a manager at any job, I think, but in public service it is really a challenge, because I think that people need to realize that you're on the front line all the time, like teachers are, and I think that librarians, especially in these days, they get a lot of important questions coming at them, and maybe challenges to what they believe in, and it's something that's really important to have a strong public library director.
Describe a particularly difficult situation with either patrons or staff you experienced. How did you handle it?
Excuse me. In my very second week as the director of the library in Tiverton, I had to let an employee go because while they had like an interim director or something like that, there was some payroll problems, and I had to do like an investigation into what was going on, and someone was getting paid and wasn't working. So that was really difficult because the person had been there for a long time, and it was a mistake, but it wasn't something that we could go back and say, okay, you're going to still continue to work there. So it was hard for the new person to come in and have to do that. One, then again, find someone to replace her who had been there for a long time, but it was something that was necessary because it was something someone had done wrong, and that at that time they didn't want it to be a big public thing, so we had to do it in a way that was, bring the person in and not make the biggest deal about it, but what she was doing was wrong. So she basically was signing her own pay and hadn't worked. So that was very difficult, and that's like a rare case, hopefully, of things ever happening, but you do hear about it and you read about it, and it's something you have to deal with, and I'm sure the board would back up the director or anyone who had to deal with that, and I'm sure that that's something that you wouldn't want going on either. So, and the board at that time did as well, obviously helped with the situation, but it was a difficult thing right away to be like, hey, welcome, and this is what you have to deal with. I think that some people knew about it, and it was like, we're going to wait for the new director. Like, oh, great, thanks. But, I dealt with it and moved on, and it worked out.
That's a rough start.
It was a rough start, yeah.
That is definitely a difficult situation,
yeah.
For sure. Wow. How do you anticipate the requirements of this position differing from the position you currently hold?
Amazingly enough, this library is not open as much as the library I'm at, because we're a boarding school, so we're open 7:30 to 10 p.m. So the hours are less to have to cover, so it's kind of a good thing for me to think about, because having to cover a longer time, we're also open on Sundays, and not that's not something that could happen here in the future. I don't know if that's been discussed, but that's a big difference to me. I think that the hours will be different, and just my hours, because I have to work on Friday nights and Saturday nights and Sundays, because I don't live there, but some people do. So that part of it is different, but also I know that any small public library director is asked to do a lot more than just the regular 9-to-5 job. And I realize that, definitely, and I think it's needed. So there's a lot involved in being a member of the community, too. So I think that At Tabor, that's a little different because it's mostly students that I deal with most of the time, but faculty and staff and their families and their kids and everyone else, the administration. So it's different, but every job I've been at is different. So everything, you have to bring what you know and kind of focus on what is needed wherever you go.
That's a long time to be open, 7:30 to 10.
Yes, and sometimes, as I mentioned about the management, sometimes people are sick and you have to be there from 7 to 10.
Right.
And it's a long day.
That's a long
Yes,
time.
it is. It's a long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is the biggest challenge you faced and how did you handle it?
Well, I did mention that other child. That was kind of big. I think that,
I'll say.
I think just me being, I really, when I get a job and when I look at, I mentioned that I want to listen to the staff that's there and see what they have suggestions for and see what their goals are as far as that goes. But I also think that I have a lot of ideas on my own, and it's sometimes hard to make that match as far as if that's, well, why don't you have this? Well, that's not the way we've ever done it before. Well, kind of coming to an in-between, a pass in the middle of what is necessary and what's not, because I really want to give, 110% to a job, and if I'm, if there's kind of, not like backlash, but if there's something that isn't there for a reason, I would have to understand that. That might be a challenge. Like, why don't you have this particular thing? Or why do you do it this way? So dealing with that, because I just want to be like gung-ho and go in and listen to what's going on, but I also think that, oh, well, maybe you could do it this way. So that's a challenge, because I also, in my life, in my library, and in my personal life, I need to learn how to say no and not try to do everything myself, because, I know that it's always said that if you want something done right, do it yourself, but I need to ask for help. And that's a challenge for me to really go, okay, I need to ask for help, and I need to say I can't do it all myself.
Okay. What do you anticipate as your biggest challenge if you are hired?
Well, I mentioned this last time that even though I lived in Fairhaven my whole entire life, I don't know, not much about Acushnet as far as the history of the town, and I don't live here, and I feel like it's, even though it's so close, it's very different from the town I grew up in and live in, and obviously I come to Acushnet a lot. Everyone, it's a neighboring town, but I feel like it's good to know the community, good to know more than just how many people live here and what, how many schools there are, but actually get to know what's here and what works and what doesn't and why things are the way they are. I think that's going to be a challenge, as it was when I moved. I lived in Fairhaven and worked in Tiverton, and I had to learn all about that town, and I had to learn about the people and why things the way they were. So I think that's a challenge definitely for anyone starting a new job. But I really, I think it's important to know the town and to actually get into it and learn to be here. And I think it's more than just coming in and opening the door and working here. It's being part of the community. So I think that's important. It's similar to being a teacher in the schools. You're going to see people in the store now that would know you, and you're part of that community, and that carries over to your life, whether or not you live on the same street as them. But you'll know them, and they'll know you. And it's when people see you, like, oh, I know you, but I don't know why I know you, because you work in the library. So I think it's public service like that that's out there. You're the public face of the library, and you want to do your job, and you want to know what you're doing. So I think that's important. So as much as I might know about fiction and nonfiction and databases and what's going on in good programming, I don't know what the people in Acushnet want. And I just walked around and looked at the books on the shelf, and I'm like, oh, okay, they have this, but they don't have this. Maybe it's out. I don't know. So learning the collection, definitely walking around and seeing what's going on and noticing, the puzzle table or whatever is new and not new, that sort of thing is important. That is a challenge. Excuse me.
This job requires a lot of flexibility to attend Board of Trustee, budget, Friends of the Library meetings, etc., and to interact with multiple different community groups during and after library hours. Do you foresee any problems with the flexibility of your schedule?
No, I think that, as I mentioned, I think it's something that's expected, and I think that it's not necessarily, a 9-to-5 job, and definitely you have to attend meetings at night or on the weekends and work Saturdays and that sort of thing, definitely.
So, And the question we all know is coming.
Uh-oh.
Tell us why you feel you're the best candidate for the job and why we should hire you.
I think that it's a small public library, that I love libraries, and I think that libraries are very important in any community, and I think it should be like the hub of the town, and I think that there should be programming for, babies, there should be programming for seniors, there should be programming for everyone in between, and finding that what works for each town is great, and when I was in Tiverton, we actually had a program for newborns, and it was every newborn got, we found out where they were, they got a little basket delivered to their house with a little, library card form and a little bib that said Born to Read and some board books. And we just distributed them for free, and that got the people to come in that may never have come in. So programs like that, I think, are really important to outreach in different groups. So new homeowners in Acushnet, why not reach out to them and say, hey, you bought a home, why don't you come in and get a library card? Different things like that might work here, might not, but you have to try to find it. So I have done a lot of different programs. Actually, the Seed Library at the Millicent Library I started, even though I don't work there, because I'm on a committee that is a Green Communities Committee and Sustainability. So I don't think they have a seed library here. And I wonder, is it because everyone has their own seeds? I don't know, but it's actually a good, I know it's agriculture is really big in Acushnet, but I think that seed library and swap is really fun. It's actually a great little thing, and we actually use the old library card catalog, and a lot of libraries are doing it now, and you just bring in your extras because you buy a packet of seeds and you don't need them all. So I started that in Fairhaven, they never had one. Lots of communities have them now. So I would like to bring different things and bring things to Acushnet that they don't have, but also learn about things that work. And I know you have movie nights. I want to know how many people come. Does it work? Does it not work? You have different programs, and I think to look at the statistics on what works and what doesn't is really good and important, especially after being closed and for COVID. So I think that's important to get people back into the library.
I think that seed program is that's really
I do keep reading about that.
Yeah, we're also doing their plant swap. So you bring, you get like a 6-pack or you plant seeds, and then you don't need them all. And so we're doing that in a couple weeks. Everyone can come. It's free. And when you're now out in your yard cutting and doing cuttings or breaking up your perennials, they can bring that. So it's going to be bring a plant, take a plant. So
that's pretty neat.
yeah.
Definitely. Does anyone else have any questions? No. Okay. Do you have any questions?
I do. So I want to know, are you library users? Do you use the library?
Yes.
Absolutely.
This little group?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
this little
for sure.
group. Yes.
No, I mean, sometimes boards are not made up that way, and they don't go to the library. They just come and make decisions, and then they don't come in. So it's good to, I like to know that people are readers, and that you are actually here as members of this board because you want the library, you want to know what's on the shelves and what you're checking out, so.
I think that's how most of us became board members.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we came here so often. Yeah.
My son reads a lot of books. I'm more of a movie watcher at this point in my life because I don't have, it takes me too long to read a book at this time. I love to read, but I just don't have a lot of time to do it. So I watch a lot of the movies, but my son is definitely an avid reader. So, and I know everyone else is always checking out books.
Yeah.
I think that's really important to
Yes.
know, just because, you know what you're dealing with. I think you have more members of your board though,
No.
right? Oh,
We have
sorry,
one
it's
member.
trustees.
Short one.
We're short one member.
Did someone
we
just get elected?
We just had an election, but we don't have the official results yet.
Oh, okay.
So we do have one more member,
Oh, okay.
but we don't know who it is.
I'm sorry, I keep calling it the board, but it says your trustees.
That's the Board of
Board of
Trustees.
Trustees.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's
All
okay.
right, okay.
Yeah.
The other question was, if there was, and I brought this up at the last meeting, and it's really in my mind, because you can't not think about it at being a librarian, is if there was a book challenge in Acushnet here at the public library, how would the board support the library director and the staff?
We have an outstanding policy in place.
Okay.
So I think any director would be very happy with that policy. We can thank Dina for that.
Yes.
So I think, we've made our thoughts known,
So recently, it's been looked at and discussed as far as like if there was someone who came in and challenged you would support the policy that you have
Yes.
and wouldn't, make sure that books wouldn't just get taken off the shelf because one
Yes.
person had. Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Because it is, obviously, if you're watching the news and paying attention to the country, that's not always the case.
No, it's a big,
sure.
big issue right now.
It is, yeah, and I think it's scary for school libraries and for public libraries, so that it's important that there is a policy in place that actually has been looked at in the past couple of years,
Yep.
because some libraries don't have current ones and some libraries don't even have them at all, so that's,
That's scary.
yeah. And I think I mentioned at the last interview that I was on a panel of, because at Old Rochester, which is close to Tabor Academy, obviously there was a challenge recently, so I was one of the panelists discussing what our policy was at Tabor and what was going on in the community right next to ours, so that's important.
Definitely.
No, I don't think I have any other questions.
All right, well, thank you so much, we appreciate it.
Sure.
What we're gonna be discussing and then voting, and then you will hear very soon,
Okay.
one way or another.
All right, great. Thank you for your time. Nice meeting you.
Thank you so much.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Well, she answered my question
Right,
without asking.
right.
This is tough, two very, very good candidates.
Yes.
Yeah.
Two very good candidates.
This is quite difficult. And my thoughts just.
Do I go up?
Nope.
Just off the top of my head, is she's so qualified, Anne is, with a lot of experience and a lot of ideas. But I still look at Elizabeth and I can't get the T-Rex thing out of my head with someone who just loves this building, just like Dina did, like we do. And I think if you balance the two of them with experience, yes, I think Anne's got more experience, but I think for having somebody whose heart's in their job, I'm not saying that Anne doesn't, but I think Elizabeth knows the community, she knows the people, she knows the staff, she's worked with them, and it's just hard though.
It's really hard.
So
Really
well
hard.
qualified, but I think that's my thoughts.
I think they
Yes.
could both be fine, they're very different personalities.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Elizabeth is very humble and unassuming, and this one is very sure of herself, and that's not a bad thing,
Correct,
So,
but very different.
yeah.
On the other hand, the one thing they both said was, I tend to do everything myself.
Yeah.
I need to ask for help. Well, okay, you do, yeah, you do, but it was funny that that came out, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I feel the same way. We all know Elizabeth, and we loved her when she was here. We know her strengths, even though she's not that good at projecting them. We know what they are.
Right, yeah.
and my thoughts in comparison, they're tremendous candidates. In fact, all four candidates were good. You know,
Yes,
everyone
yes.
that we interviewed was great,
Yes.
as were these two. That we, they have a lot of things in common. Anne's experience is impressive, and Elizabeth's experience can't be, I'll say, minimized, because she has a substantial amount from Suffolk, and we watched the progression as she worked through the different responsibilities, and so I thought she acquired them over that period of time. They're not quite equivalent, but they are very close. Anne was a very good speaker. I think she'd be a good representative, and she's proactive. But with one of the things that impressed me, and I didn't have it on notes before we talked today, was when Elizabeth said how much she loved this library.
I
She
know.
talked about the T-Rex, and she said this is
Yeah.
where she fell in love with library. And that was hard
Yeah.
before we even finished the interview. I made some notes, and that was very
Mhm.
convincing, I would say the word is. And so they were both very eager. Elizabeth specifically said she'd take all the courses she needs to, if she needs anything from MLS.
Mhm.
That was a good thing too. They both have good people skills, I believe. One thing that didn't come out in the interview that I noticed from, say, the resumes is Elizabeth has substantial computer skills, and as libraries transition to needing more computer, I found that to be something that I would give sort of a real plus to Elizabeth's application. So that's mine.
I
observations.
remember that from when she was here. You
Yeah,
could ask her
yeah.
anything and she knew the answer.
She knew, she was very well
around it.
versed,
Yeah.
you know, so I like that. I made notes of that at that time, but also bring that up.
Diane, do you have anything else to add?
Listening to Ann, I guess with the experience, she answered a few of the questions that I had in mind. Listening to the staff instead of coming in and saying, this is where it's gonna be. She's gonna sit back and listen. What she's saying, hopefully that's what she would do, because I think that's important. That's what I did when I got a new job, new department, or whatever.
Right.
I don't know, she kind of, I don't know, impressed me
Okay.
with what she had said. Elizabeth, I mean, of course, she's gonna have more experience, and she's gonna know what to say, how to say it, and whatever. Elizabeth, like you said, we know how she feels about this, do we do it? So it's like this is her library, this is gonna be her home, or whatever, or, I don't know, it's just hard, because they're both good in two different ways.
Exactly.
And now we have to decide which way we want to go. Do you want to go with the experience, or do you want to go with the one that's she's gonna have to learn a lot, but Dina left a heck of a lot of notes. And I'm sure she can find her way, and when she can't, I'm sure she'll ask us, or somebody will help her. So, either.
And there is the training and her eagerness to find the answers.
To learn, I mean,
And
if
to learn.
she's gone this far, I'm sure she's ready to learn. She didn't do it for nothing.
And she's held several different positions on the way up,
Yep.
and she's
Yeah.
excelled at all of them. So for her lack of experience as a director, I think she's made up, you know.
Oh, yeah, one other thing I wanted to note on is her experience in the most recent time frame is in the public realm. I don't think that can be underestimated. It's
Right.
Elizabeth now that I'm talking about. Elizabeth has been exclusively in the public realm for so many years. I think that has to be factored in to counteract some of the other areas where she'll be acquiring some of the experience. And either candidate we're going to support as a board. So, yeah, just want to add that.
So I think we have Ann going from public to school, and we have Elizabeth going from school to public.
Yeah, yeah.
So Elizabeth more recently is in the public. Well, does anyone have
Any
anything else to
questions
add?
from the audience?
Any comments from anyone?
Questions or comments? This is not easy, but I would like to make a motion to accept, to nominate Elizabeth as our director.
Like a second.
Okay, Nancy,
Aye.
Steve,
Elizabeth.
aye.
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Okay, then we will put an offer together and we will notify the candidates. Now we are going to go into executive session, not to return to open meeting to discuss the director's salary and contract. Can we get a?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting to go into executive session, not to return.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This meeting of the Acushnet Public Library Board of Trustees is officially adjourned. It is 5:43. Thank you.